welcome to episode 25 of Missle Industries Ford Falcon XC351 Crusty Wagon Project. Now today I'm going to attempt to fix some dents and some divots and deploy bog and spray putty to get some particularly unpresentable guards into a more presentable state. Now one of them is probably a bit far beyond salvation because it is quite ripply, but the orange taxi guard that I bought late last year and welded the front quarter onto, I think I can salvage that to within 80 to 90% of a factory guard without too much effort. So I'm going to do that. If you can see in the rear, I've also got the rear spoiler and primer, because after an inspection of that and a good wash and a clean, it's actually covered in divots like it's been sitting in someone's shed for years and years and years and been pushed from pillar to post, and it's actually quite scratched up. Now I initially said I wasn't going to get too carried away with this, but after I put these panels into primer, they actually looked pretty shithouse. So I thought to myself, make an effort. You've got some bog lying around and a palm sander to connect to your compressed air compressor, so just have at it, and we'll just see how I can go with this and see if I can fill in those divots and contour some of those dents out of that guard with a bit of creative bog use, and see if I can get those guards onto this car by the end of the episode. If you check that, they might just stay off the car for the time being, because if they go back on the car and I don't paint the car for a while, they're just going to sit on the car doing nothing. Decisions. Should I put this thing in paint next week, or should I be a little bit more diligent with my prep work? I probably should put some more effort into the prep work, because the secret to a good finish is the prep work. Even though the prep work is no fun. So while I was painting the roof last weekend, the last thing I did was spray some primer over these parts here before I packed everything up, just to see what everything looked like in primer. And they look shit. So this weekend I'm going to attempt to remedy all of that pitted nastiness and make these smooth out a little bit after a bit of prep work. This is my taxi orange guard, and I'm fairly confident I can salvage this one within a good standard. That one over there that came with the car, it's got a bit of patina action going on, and there is a fair amount of surface rust on the upper, but nowhere near as bad as the other one, because it wasn't completely stripped before it was abandoned in the guy's backyard for 8 years. So hopefully I can go over that one with a grinder, maybe a flap disc, maybe the sander, get rid of all that surface rust, and then put that one into primer and just see what I'm up against. So while this guard is complete, there are a lot of dents and ripples that probably aren't going to lend themselves to being straightened out. I'll get it in primer and I'll reevaluate, because if I can just put a skim over that, I might get away with it, but I think that's going to end up being a ridge, so it's just not going to come up the way I want it. This whole section here is a mess. These guards aren't that easy to find anymore, so I'm just going to have to persevere with what I've got. So after many painful hours of waiting for my putty and bog to dry, I finally think I can reapply some more putty and bog. But first things first, I'm going to give that guard a bit of a sand and see how much more bog I need to apply to hide those horrors that the primer revealed. So let's get into it. sanded this guard down with 180 grit after the orbital sander. And it still needs quite a bit more bog. But what I'm going to do now is throw some primer over it and this rear wing and let it sit, and then apply bog and probably some more spray putty and check on it tomorrow morning. So hopefully we get the right amount of bog on this section here to follow the line of the guard, because currently it's kind of concaved. It's better than it was because I've already got a layer of bog on it, but it's not the greatest. So it usually takes 2 or 3 stabs for me to get this semi right. So more bog after I throw down some primer to see how bad it really is. Say after a second coat of primer, after all of that prep work, this guard is looking much better. I will put some more bog along there to make that body line a bit more defined. It's disappeared. A little bit more bog in there, possibly in there too. But I'm pretty happy with that. And the spoiler is looking good too with a coat of primer on it. The spray putty seems to have done its job. This doesn't look anywhere near as horrendous as it looked this morning. I'll give that a bit of a sand with a block. Maybe even put some top coat on that in the morning so I can put it back on the car. That would be most excellent. So after a morning of careful sanding and more sanding, that's looking pretty decent. Won't know for sure until I get some primer on it. I'll do that later today. See how it comes up. I'm pretty pleased with how that lower quarter repair has turned out with a bit of judicious bog application. It's looking like it'll take a coat of top coat and be pretty difficult to pick out to the casual observer from 10 meters away. What I will do right now though is lay down some spray putty and go over this with some sandpaper later on today. Hopefully I can fill in these little bog divots without having to get more bog out. You will note that I've pulled the eyebrow off because I really needed to get into that corner there and tidy that up, because the eyebrow prevented that from happening. While I've been waiting for my spray putty to cure so I can sand it, I thought I might throw down some Neptune blue on my rear spoiler, because the sooner I put that back on the car the better, because right now the only thing that's stopping me from buttoning up my wagon tailgate is all the missing parts, including this wing, that aren't on the roof. Because all the stuff was missing when I got the car, except for the wing. I had to go find it all. I'm not really sure how it all goes back together just yet, but I can't cobble back together the glass surrounds and channels until this wing goes back on the roof. So I'm going to put this roof wing back on the car sooner rather than later. And yes, it's blue while the roof is white because of reasons, and hopefully I can reassemble my wagon rear window seal and channel, and all the pieces that I've bought actually work together, and there'll be one less thing to worry about. I couldn't resist a sneaky install. It's very blue compared to the white roof. Summary time for episode 25. Well, I did indeed get both guards back onto the car. That one still needs more paint, and I have put the roof spoiler back onto the car because I couldn't resist. So I'm going to wrap this episode up because I want to get my sedan back into the shed. So for the time being I'm going to shelve the bodywork until I've figured out why I'm throwing paint on the bonnet of my car. My concern is once I apply paint to the rest of the car, it's going to fry the primer on that too because of all of the bad paint. Now the underside of the bonnet's been okay, and this guard didn't come with the car. The rest of the car, well, the roof's okay so far.